Bluegrass Brooklyn, our podcast all about the music we love, straight from the Bluegrass borough of Brooklyn, New York.
Welcome to the final episode of Season 2. My name is Liz Wolfe.
And I'm Mike Wilner.
And just so you know, we are going to be taking a 2-week break before we start all over again with Season 3.
And that's August 7th for the first episode.
August 7th.
Excellent.
So there's so much happening. Why are we taking 2 weeks off? Well, first of all, I happen to be going to Grey Fox, and I am very excited about that. I'm going to start my journey up there on Monday. I know there are a bunch of folks that will be at Grey Fox, so if you are, join me in the High Meadow Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning. Just walk straight up the hill, and you will see at 11 a.m. we do a daily jam there, and I would love to see you, so come on by for that. Not everybody will be at Grey Fox, so Mike, what's happening in the city?
Yeah, on Friday, July 18th, if you happen to be in the deep south of Brooklyn, Bay Ridge, come on by. They're turning 3rd Avenue into a pedestrian mall, and we will be performing and jamming in front of Delia's Lounge at 93rd Street and 3rd Avenue. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I wanted to let people know I'm hosting a Warwick Method Jam Camp at a wonderful retreat center in Warwick, New York, accessible by public transportation. And I'm really excited about it because I'm going to be partnering with Deane, that amazing singer, fiddler, guitar player. And we're going to have an amazing time. I know Mike's planning on being there.
Absolutely.
It was so amazing the first year. And one thing people had to request is if they could have a fiddler in there. And so we got one. If you don't know Alex's musical work, you really should get to know her. And if you would like to see her sooner than later, on Saturday, July 26th, in the Urbane Arts Club in Ditmas Park, she's going to be playing at an event that's highlighting Southern authors. So go and listen to Alex, who's playing with Landon Trust, and Eric Alvar, 2 other amazing local Brooklyn musicians.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. We'll drop that into the program notes. And please remember to follow us on Instagram at Bluegrass Brooklyn. Brooklyn is spelled BKLYN. You can join the fun at the Facebook group, Bluegrass Brooklyn, or visit bluegrassbrooklyn.com. And if you want to find jams, where should they go, Liz?
BluegrassJamsNearMe.com.
All right.
Come on and play with us.
All right. So are we ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's roll.
Well, welcome everybody. Today I have Tatiana Hargreaves with me, and she is a prominent woman in bluegrass, but she's also a professor at the University of North Carolina and has some amazing projects that she's working on. So we want to hear all about that. And so welcome, Tatiana.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
All right. Why don't you quickly tell us now just where people could find you if they're looking for more information about what you're up to?
Yeah, I mostly keep my Instagram updated. My Instagram handle is Dragon Fiddler, which I made when I was a kid. But I like it, so I kept it. And then also my website, TatianaHargreaves.com.
Great. And certainly a lot going on, all of which I want to hear about. Why don't you give us some background and tell us what your story is?
Yeah, well, I play the fiddle. I grew up in Oregon doing a lot of fiddle contests out on the West Coast and grew up playing fiddle contest music and bluegrass local jams with my family for the past 7, 8-ish years. I've been living in Durham, North Carolina. My main projects right now are a duo with Allison Groot, who's a clawhammer banjo player, and the band called Hard Drive, which is the blurry line between old time and bluegrass. I also teach at UNC in Chapel Hill. Both my parents play music. My mom plays cello and violin and guitar, and my dad plays dobro and guitar. I also have an older brother who has been on this podcast, and he's a great fiddle player. So yeah, music was what we did together as a family. Our summers were spent going to music festivals and fiddle camps and fiddle contests, and that was the way my life was structured as a kid. The centerpiece was music and the way that we connected as a family. My mom has incredible music taste. She's always listening to really great music, anything from trad folk from England and Ireland and Scotland to klezmer music to classical music. And then since my dad plays dobro, there's a lot of dobro music in the house, whether it's Jerry Douglas or like Hawaiian guitar like Sol Hopi.
You mentioned fiddle contests, and then you said the words fiddle contest music. Is there like special fiddle contest music?
Yeah, well, it's definitely regional, but out on the West Coast, most of the contest style fiddling is what's often referred to as Texas style or Texas contest style fiddling. There's a certain repertoire, a certain style of playing, a certain pedagogy. Like you can tell who someone teacher is when you go to a contest. There's certain versions of tunes. So it's a very specific tradition. And that was my main musical foundation.
How does fiddle contests, who judges it, and how do you decide who wins? Because they're all probably amazing. What's the criteria?
Usually the judges are people who have won the contest in the past or bigger names in that fiddle circle. You're judged on your drive, your rhythm, how clean your tone is, how interesting your arrangement of the tune is. Each division, there's a different set of criteria because it's based on the pool of whoever's in that division, whether it's based on age or whatever. You play a set of tunes, usually 2 to 3 tunes, like a breakdown, a waltz, and a tune of choice. Now, as I'm a teacher, I'm like, wow, I learned so much from my fiddle teacher growing up preparing for these contests because you have to know a wide range of repertoire, different types of tunes that have different characteristics to them, and to be able to go between those tunes and really focusing on rhythm and drive and quality of tone, and also having something unique to say about that tune that marks you as distinct. I feel like those are all qualities that I continue to strive for in my fiddle playing.
And if you were to guess, how many fiddle tunes do you actually know?
I know a lot of fiddle tunes, and there's a lot of fiddle tunes I do not know. Never ending supply of information.
Are new fiddle tunes getting composed?
Yeah, there's a lot of great new fiddle tunes being written all the time, and some of them come into the popular repertoire faster than others. I think it is more common in the bluegrass world than the old time world. There are new old time tunes being written, but it's way less likely to hear those more modern tunes in a jam at a fiddler's convention or something.
Right. And so you're straddling the old time and bluegrass world, it sounds like. Tell us a little bit about what draws you to each of those genres.
Yeah, the more I've learned about my favorite bluegrass fiddlers and a lot of my favorite old time fiddlers, genre is a made up category, anyways. A lot of the musicians have always played a lot of different genres. A lot of the early bluegrass fiddlers considered themselves to be old time fiddlers. Folks like Paul Warren or even Tex Logan, like he considered himself to be an old time fiddler that played bluegrass. I feel like I fall into that tradition. I love knowing that it's part of a whole group of musicians that have gone in between different musical worlds, and people like one of my mentors, Alice Gerrard, she also had a bluegrass career and has been part of the old time music community, and she's a songwriter. Like all these genre categories, they're helpful to identify sounds and mostly helpful for selling sounds. But the musicians who play these different genres never perfectly fit within one or the other.
I've only ever been to one old time jam in my life, mostly because I'm a singer more than a player. Do you find that there's a lot coming to old time jams and bluegrass jams, or do people tend to gravitate more towards the one or the other?
I think it's a regional thing. And it's also a generational thing. I've been noticing a trend of a lot more people my age and younger playing both. Whereas growing up, my mentor figures were very much in these separate worlds. So I think there's this momentum to be a part of these different worlds. And in Durham, there's a lot of overlap between who shows up to the old time jams and the bluegrass jams. And you can tell who's more of a bluegrass musician and who's more of an old time musician, but we're part of the same community. Growing up, I always gravitated more towards old time because I found there are a lot more women playing old time music, so I felt more comfortable, I felt more accepted, whereas the bluegrass community seemed a lot more inaccessible to me. But I think the old time community was way more of a place where I felt like I could just be myself. And I think the bluegrass community is opening up and becoming more queer friendly. There are a lot more women instrumentalists as well. I sing, but I'm primarily an instrumentalist. Old time music often feels more accessible because it is community focused, a lot of dance music. You're playing together, so you don't have to be stressed about taking a solo.
Do you think there's something about old time that makes it more welcoming to women or have more of a tradition around more women?
I think it's just a little bit more welcoming overall. Old time music is also a very broad category. Bluegrass is so specific. It's like music from Bill Monroe and what came after that. Old time music can encompass a wide array of fiddle styles and vocal styles and string band music. There's a lot more diversity in that history as well. And also, it's older than bluegrass music. So there's more that different people can latch on to or relate to because it's not so specific. Whereas bluegrass, you have to be interested in that very specific thing, versus old time music could be you're interested in ballads or ragtime or early blues music or square dance tunes. There's more of a mixture.
You're making me want to go to another old time jam. One of the themes I like to talk about is your experience as a woman in bluegrass. And I know in speaking with Hillary Hawk recently, she was expressing some of her experience around that. So your experience of growing up in a bluegrass world that we all know is male dominated.
I became very used to being not only the only girl, but also often the youngest one, which is changing, which is exciting for me. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to I haven't necessarily been accepted until I prove my musical worth. So once I can prove that I can hang and play, then all of a sudden the whole mood shifts and I become one of the boys. And I know that's something that men feel as well entering into the bluegrass world, but I think there are added layers. I think sometimes women and non-binary folks have to work a little bit harder to be seen, even to just not be passed over for a solo. I think that's a major thing, is even if a man goes to a bluegrass jam for the first time and feels like he's looked over until he can prove himself, he'll probably not be skipped over for a solo. Whereas if there's like a woman with a guitar, a lot of people just assume that you can't flat pick. So I think that's a big thing. There's the assumption that women are singers and not instrumentalists. It's just the constant power play of proving yourself and proving that you do belong. There's that added dimension when you are the only woman or queer person in the room. So that's definitely one of the biggest things that I've felt, is just the constant pressure to have to prove my worth through my music, which is really messed up.
Yes, I really resonate with what you're saying. The way we have to be. I don't mean we, just women. I mean we who are feeling left out or not brought in. I mean, you feel like it's not welcome, but it could be welcoming. It's just that in most human interactions, if there's a group already formed and you walk into it, you won't feel welcome because you won't know anybody and you'll think everybody else already knows everybody. And
Right.
so it hasn't been very frequent that I've done something where they'll literally say, no, we're rehearsing right now, or we don't want to play with other people, because that's the bluegrass way, right?
And I think also it's like when it's a public jam, I do think it's a responsibility of the jam leaders to maybe go out of your comfort zone. And if you see someone new, to be like, hey, like, how'd you hear about the jam? Versus like at a festival when you're just jamming with your friends, that's a very different dynamic than like a public organized jam where I think it's the responsibility of the leaders of that jam to be welcoming. And that's something I get really frustrated with. You're organizing this public jam. Why aren't you seeking out the new faces and bringing them in? That's your responsibility. You're a public face for this jam.
Yes, I'm with you. This is the job of the jam leader, to make sure everybody feels included.
Yeah.
I would love to hear how you got to the University of North Carolina and a little bit more about your work there.
Yeah. So when I finished my undergrad degree, I had been touring with Lori Lewis and her band. We had just recorded the Hazel and Alice Sessions album. I'd been playing all this Hazel Dickens and Alice Gerrard repertoire with Lori, and Lori was really the first person to hire me for a bluegrass gig. She mentored me a lot and gave me a lot of confidence. I had met Alice as a kid at a music camp. I was about to finish college and I was trying to figure out what to do next. And I was like, maybe I'll move to Durham, North Carolina and hang out with Alice. So that's what I did. And I moved to Durham basically just knowing Alice. And that was in 2017. So I've been here since then. A half year after moving here or so, a position opened up at UNC. They were looking for a bluegrass fiddle instructor. I applied for the job and got it. I've been teaching more and more in the music department, teaching some courses in addition to private lessons. It just kind of happened, being in the right place at the right time. And I love working with the students there, and I have great colleagues, and it's really nice to have the teaching in addition to touring. It feels like a nice balance, even though it's a lot sometimes to be doing it all. But I really love that.
And you are doing a lot. If you look on the website, you will see there's many places that you're playing. Some of them are far flung, right? There's Finland or something?
Yeah, I'm going to Finland for the first time. Me and Allison de Groot, our duo, we're teaching at a music camp and playing at a folk festival there coming up in late June. We haven't played in New York in a long time. It'd be really fun to.
Yes, let's get you here. So do you come to Brooklyn much?
Yeah, I'll come up and do stuff. I play with Michael Daves a lot, so I've done some stuff up there with him, and I always love visiting Alex. And our grandparents were from New York, so we grew up coming and visiting a lot as kids.
What do you think of the Brooklyn bluegrass scene?
I always have a great time coming up and playing bluegrass up in New York. I feel like whenever I've done gigs with Michael, it's always such a fun time. I don't know a whole lot of the local scene, but everyone that I've met, it's been really fun.
If you were to give a fiddler tip, like you are a teacher, you teach a lot, I have to admit, don't know anything about the fiddle, but we certainly have a lot of listeners who play the fiddle. So what's a good fiddle jamming tip for people?
It's so different for everyone. Probably the most common thing I say across the board is starting to narrow down what you want to sound like. I notice the most is like people don't always know how to practice in a way that will get them to where they want to be. So I like to think about there being these multiple modes of practicing. My favorite kind of practice is play practice, which is essentially going to a jam. What's the point if you're not doing that? So obviously that's the most important thing. But in addition to that, if you want to get better, there are things that you can do on your own as well. And another one is listening, identifying what fiddlers you want to sound like really closely listening, and also understanding the roots. If you really like Jason Carter's fiddling, who did he listen to? Who are his main influences? And that's something that I notice with modern bluegrass is our frame of reference is more narrow because we're just listening to the bands that are contemporary and we're not going back to who were they listening to. And that's why I love some of those early bluegrass fiddlers, because their frame of reference is much more interesting to me. Like thinking about Kenny Baker was listening to blues and jazz and old time. His father was an old time fiddler. That's really the roots of bluegrass fiddling, is blues and old time and jazz. Having that mixture of the drive of a dance tune, of a square dance tune, of a fiddle tune, and then having the vocabulary of a blues musician. Listening and understanding where are those sounds coming from that are so integral to bluegrass fiddle. You do want to practice slowly and intentionally and get good intonation and tone, but then also practicing what I call exploratory practice or creative practice. Like you want to practice improvising. You want to practice creating your own sound and creating your own ideas. And that comes from a combination of all these other types of practicing, the listening and the playing. You start to compile the sounds that you want to emulate and the sounds that you want to put into your own voice, to practice improvising and to try out new things so then that you can take that to a jam. So I think that's the thing I focus on the most as a teacher, is expanding your palette so you have a bunch of different reference points, and then creating a practice where you start to construct your own sound based on this frame of reference.
Are there any fiddlers that stand out to you that you would say, yeah, go listen to so-and-so if you want to learn more different styles?
I love the early bluegrass fiddlers, Kenny Baker, obviously. I love Paul Warren's fiddle playing, Chubby Weiss, like all of those classic bluegrass fiddlers. I would say some of my favorite bluegrass fiddlers at the moment, Tex Logan, who I've been obsessed with over the last decade now. I'm working on a Tati Plays Tex album. But it's hard to find recordings of him. And then I also really love Joe Green. The Joe Green fiddle album is really great. He's playing a lot of Texas fiddle repertoire, like contest fiddle repertoire, and then it's with a bluegrass backing band, but people aren't taking solos. He's just playing straight up fiddle tunes. I love that sound of fiddle tunes played well, played interestingly, played with really good groove. That's my favorite thing.
Are there any women fiddlers that you admire?
Yeah, there's fewer older generation fiddlers. One who's a total badass is Vivian Williams. She was from Seattle, and she was actually the only woman to ever play fiddle in the Bluegrass Boys with Bill Monroe. When he was on tour in the Northwest, she played fiddle with him. You can find recordings of her. I used to see her around at the fiddle contest growing up. She was always there, but again, I was so young, I didn't know who she was. I wish I had. But yeah, she's one of the earliest examples in bluegrass of a woman fiddle player. Also, there's Kate Warren, who played with Joe Maphis and played on the Town Hall Party, that country music show from the 50s, based out of California. And she was in the house band. I really like the older stuff, so there's tons of contemporary women fiddler players now. I really love Karina Rose Logston. She plays in the band High Fidelity. She's an incredible fiddle player. She has a great fiddle album. There's just so many great fiddle players out today. It would be hard to narrow it down.
Spend all day just listening to fiddle players. So give us anything that you're working on right now that we can look forward to.
You can find me on Instagram. Dragon Fiddler is my Instagram handle. And you can find me on streaming platforms. If you look up Allison de Groot and Tatiana Hargreaves, that's my main project, or my band Hard Drive. I am recording a Tati Plays Tex album that Michael Daves is producing. So I'm in the process of making that album right now.
Thank you so much for this amazing interview. I've enjoyed every moment and really learned a lot. So I really appreciate that. And you do have to let us know when you come back up to the Brooklyn area so we can play together.
I would love that. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Jam Talk. Liz and I will be chatting about jam-related topics, just getting our thoughts out there. First of all, Liz, that jam you hosted at Greeley Square Park in Midtown Manhattan on Tuesday, July 8th was awesome. I'm really glad I got a chance to go. How did you get that set up?
This was one of the most amazing stories, and what I love about Bluegrass, I had my website out there, my meetup out there, and people from the 34th Street Partnership contacted me, and they said, would you like to do a monthly jam at one of our public spaces? And if you don't know about the 34th Street Partnership, they have multiple parks. They have the Greeley Square. Last year we played at Plaza 33 on 33rd Street. They have Herald Square, and they do a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, they took good care of us, right? They set up the mics. They brought amplification equipment. It was fun. We got a lot of smiles and a lot of thank yous from passersby. You're doing another Warwick class up at Warwick. You mentioned earlier in the show, right? With Alex?
Yeah. And, the purposes of those Warwick method classes is to understand the etiquette of jamming, because there's very specific bluegrass etiquette. And I know a lot of newbies are very nervous. Like, what if I do the wrong thing? Because frankly, a lot of newbies do the wrong thing.
Yep.
So we really want you to feel confident when you're jamming.
But you know what I haven't heard discussed a lot is how to bust a jam. How do you really just ruin everybody's good time at a jam session? So why don't you tell me, Liz, what would be your favorite way to bust a jam? If you really wanted to just stink the place up, what would you do?
I would pick a song that had about 5 chords in an unusual progression. It's got a couple 6 minors, a couple 2s in there, or a 3. That's the worst when there's a 3. But your key to learning whether or not this song is going to be a jam buster, actually there's 2 keys. One is you say, anybody know I was riding into town the other day? And everybody looks blank-faced, nobody knows it. And they say, well, what is it? We'll try to learn it. And you go, oh, it's pretty easy. It's just got, it starts on the 5, actually, and then it goes to the 4, and then it goes back to the 1. But don't forget, in the chorus, it's going to have a 2. Now, I've already spent more time explaining the song that nobody knows
Yep.
it's just not going to come out. I like to say those are the best songs you would do if it's 1 a.m. and you're at a festival and the last 6 hardcore players are left. And you could be like, does anybody know I was riding into town the other day? And they're like, no, but let's learn it. And then you can take the time.
Yep.
But not if you're trying to keep people's attention when you are in a circle of anywhere from 6 to 20 people. You're just not going to be able to do it.
I feel like jam time is precious time. So I think anything that wastes time in a jam, it's a very social event, so there's going to be back and forth. But here's one of my favorites. Let's do Roll in My Sweet Baby's Arms. And now I'm like, is it a G? I don't know. If you call a song, know the song. When people call songs they don't know and cannot describe, it spends a lot of time. It confuses people. And like you say, we need to keep people's attention and keep the thing moving. Okay, what else? Come up with another one, Liz.
Well, to piggyback on that, the other thing that I'll say, a lot of newer jammers think, and I used to think this, that they need to know a lot of songs. And the fact is you do not. So every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I always call Bury Me Beneath the Willow. And then they say, so let me call a song that I've been practicing this week that I don't really know.
Right.
Again, those are good for when there's just a few people. If I'm in a jam with 6 people, I'll say, well, let me start with a song that I've only ever played once before. And then I have my notes handy. I know it's a big thing about whether you should have paper or whatever, but I have it handy, so I'm going to be able to remember it and keep people going. But don't worry about it if you only know 3 songs. You should know 3 because somebody might already do Bury Me Beneath the Willow.
Right.
And then practice calling those other songs at other times.
Yeah. So another jam buster. And I think it has to do with the momentum and the culture of the jam you're in. There's the tuning time, the tuning chatting time. So it's my turn to call a song. And I start chatting to the person next to me, maybe about the song or something related to the song or what version I'm going to sing. And I'm tuning. And everybody's kind of waiting because we have 2.5 hours to play. And everybody would like to call 1 or 2, maybe 3 songs. 2 is reasonable. 3 is a bonus. But if I'm going to expend 5 or 10 minutes of jam time just chattering, I think it becomes a responsibility of the jam members in general to keep things moving, especially when people start saying, what's the song? Did you call a song yet? What's the key? And you're still tuning and chatting. So I guess tuning and chatting is a potential jam buster in my mind. Okay, let's do one more each. Go ahead. Make it a good one, Liz.
Piggybacking on that, what always cracks me up is, especially as a jam leader, what cracks me up is I'm very deliberate and it's clear that I'm going in a circle. And when I'm at somebody else's jam and they're going in a circle, I'm thinking 2 or 3 people ahead, what song am I going to do? What happens is I get to a person, I'll say, so Bobby Sue, what are you going to do? And they go, oh, is it my turn? And I'm thinking to myself, dude, 4 people ago, you knew it was in a circle and it was coming to you.
Yep.
But you'd be surprised at the number of times that the person, when it's their turn, stops and doesn't acknowledge that it's their turn. This is why we got to keep going, because every minute means one more person gets to do a song.
Absolutely, 100%. I think the theme here is keep things moving. I guess I'm going to finalize my list of jam busters. And by the way, I'm going to caveat all this. It's up to the culture of the jam. Some jams want to have a lot of chat time because they're very social and they want to do that. So all that's true. But time for Mike to call a song. And, you know, I like my songs, so I'm going to get up and say, I'm going to play Columbus Stockade Blues. Doug Watson did this on this album in this year in this key, but I listened to the Tony Rice version. In fact, I saw Tony Rice do this in 1979. I went with, and this can take quite a while. Our songs are dear to us, but when you're going to let it all out, when you should actually be saying, it's in G, let's go. It goes from G to D to G, and this chorus starts on a C. That's about what you should be saying. I like to find relatively obscure songs. I'll get up and say, let's do It's Raining Here This Morning, Stanley Brothers, key of D. We're going to go to, blah, blah. People will sometimes, if it's an obscure and interesting song, where'd you hear that? What album? And then you can spend a little bit back and forth. But I think prefacing songs at great length is, for me at least, a bit of a time suck and my final jam buster.
The problem with that, too, by the way, for those of you leading songs, is that you have a very limited window of time to get people's attention, to hear what key it is, to hear what the song is, to learn the song if they don't know it. And if you're talking, they will start talking, and it makes it much harder to start a song. It's not really a jam buster, but something that doesn't work is when you start a song when people aren't paying attention. People just start singing. I'm like, wait, there's no one is playing right now. So yeah, the more you can be really succinct, like this is the song, this is the key, it's in waltz time or it's whatever, 1-4-1-5, and strum a little bit. Wait for that bass player to start going with you, because then people will pay attention. That'll keep the jam going.
You stuck in an extra one, so I'm going to stick in an extra one too. But this is directed to singers. I love when people come and sing at jams. I really appreciate that people do that. When we start a jam song, somebody strums. You'll see everyone's listening. They get the beat. They start strumming too. Everyone then gets in sync, and then the song really starts. I find a lot of singers will say, I'd like to sing Columbus Stockade Blues way down. Whoa, nobody's ready. Nobody knows how fast the rhythm you go. We're not even sure what key you're in. I'm happy if a singer comes up and says, I'd like to sing such and such song. I'm not sure what key it is. Sing some. We'll figure it out. Okay. And 2 or 3 people will listen, play some chords and say, okay, everybody, it's a 1-4-1-5 in D. Now we can play with you. We can support your song.
We'll see over the course of the Gray Fox jams. I'm going to do a lot of jam in Gray Fox, so I'll see if I can get some more tips from people.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be up at the Bluegrass Week with you also at Ashokan, and we're going to be jamming a lot there, and we'll also be podcasting. And I couldn't help myself. The following week is Southern Week, where there's going to be a whole section of Cajun music and stuff. And as a fiddler who wants to learn Cajun music, this is going to be great. So I will get plenty of opportunities to bust a few jams, experiment, and see what else there is we can do to throw jams
and
off
also
track.
just to make sure people know, I've busted my share of jams. So this comes from personal experience. It's not about how everybody else does everything wrong.
Absolutely. I too have thrown any number of songs completely off track. So with that, Liz, nice chatting with you. And this has been Jam Talk.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this final episode of Season 2 with Tati Hargreaves, an amazing woman in bluegrass. She has just been really impacting a lot of young, promising musicians there at the University of North Carolina, and we appreciate her for all she is doing to contribute to bluegrass.
Yeah, making sure this music we love stays alive. We'll be back in 2 weeks, returning on August 7th with Season 3, Episode 1. We will be speaking to Maddie Denton and Harry Clark of East Nash Grass. It's going to be a lot of fun. Please remember to follow us at Bluegrass Brooklyn. Join us on the Bluegrass Brooklyn Facebook group. Or if you're looking for jams uptown or in Riverdale or even in Jersey, it turns out, bluegrassjamsnearme.com. So, Liz, we ready to wrap it?
Yes. Thanks so much. Everybody have a great one.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you around the jam circle.